Commander Solari opened her eyes slowly and looked around the small room. It was dark, cold, and silent except for the faint hum of machines in the distance. She was lying on a hard metal bed, her hands tied behind her back. The walls were rough and gray, made of thick metal plates. She did not know where she was exactly, but she could tell she was a prisoner. Her heart beat fast. She had been caught during a mission to scout the enemy's position. The humans, those strange, unpredictable creatures, had captured her. Her people had always warned her about humans. They said humans were cruel, dangerous, and had no respect for life. They called them monsters from a death world. Now she was face to face with one. Solari closed her eyes tightly. She expected pain, fear, and maybe even death. She imagined a tall human soldier with hard eyes and cold hands coming in to hurt her. She waited for the worst, but nothing came. Instead, she heard soft footsteps approaching. The door hissed open. A man entered. He wore a worn-out uniform and carried no weapons in his hands. His face was strong and weathered from battle. His eyes, dark and tired, looked at her carefully. He did not smile or show anger. He simply nodded and placed a small metal tray on a table near her. On the tray was food, a simple meal of some bread, water, and strange fruit. The human soldier said only one word: "Eat." Solari stared at the food but did not move. She did not trust him. Maybe it was a trick. Maybe he wanted to see if she would eat, so he could control her better later. But her stomach was empty, and hunger was stronger than fear. Slowly, she took a piece of bread and ate it. The soldier sat quietly in a corner of the room, watching her without saying a word. Days passed like this. The soldier came once or twice, a day to bring food or water. He never touched her or spoke much. Solari began to notice small things. He was careful not to scare her. Sometimes he whispered quietly when no one else was near. Sometimes he helped a small injured bird near the camp, gently feeding it. These little acts confused Solari. Why would a human be so kind to someone they considered an enemy? One night, the camp was quiet. Solari was resting on the cold floor when she heard a soft knock on the door. The soldier opened it and looked inside. He had a small cloth in his hand. Without waiting for her to ask, he stepped inside and carefully cleaned a small cut on her arm. Solari flinched but did not pull away. The soldier's hands were steady and careful. He did not hurt her. He smiled very briefly, a small, almost shy smile. Solari was surprised. No one had ever shown her this kind of kindness. Her people believed that enemies were to be feared and hated, but this human soldier was different. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly, her voice weak. The soldier looked at her and said, "Because you are not a monster." Solari's eyes widened. She did not know what to say. Her whole life, she had believed humans were monsters. Now, this one was telling her she was not. Over the next few days, Solari watched the soldier carefully. She saw how he treated others, his fellow soldiers, the animals, even the plants around the camp. He was patient, strong, and gentle all at once. One day, during a sudden attack on the camp by enemy forces, Solari was caught outside. Explosions sounded all around. She tried to run but was almost hit by falling debris. Suddenly, a strong hand grabbed her and pulled her to safety behind a large metal wall. It was the human soldier. He held her close, shielding her body as bullets flew nearby. Solari felt his heartbeat. It was steady and calm. For the first time, she did not feel fear. She felt safe. After the attack ended, Solari looked at the soldier and said, "You saved me. Why?" He smiled gently and replied, "Because everyone deserves to live." That night, Solari could not sleep. She thought about everything she had learned, the kindness, the courage, the hope that this human soldier showed. She closed her eyes, but instead of fear, she felt something new. A small spark of trust. Maybe humans were not the monsters she thought they were. Days passed slowly in the small human camp. Commander Solari was still a captive, But the fear she had felt at first was changing. The human soldier, Daniel Reese, continued to treat her with a strange kindness that did not match the stories her people told her about humans. Every morning, Daniel brought her food and water. Sometimes he spoke softly, telling her small stories about his home world. His voice was calm and steady, a sharp contrast to the chaos of war around them. Scifi was cautious. She wanted to believe that not all humans were monsters, but it was hard to trust after everything she had been taught. Still, she could not deny that Daniel's actions were different. One afternoon, Scifi watched as Daniel knelt beside a wounded animal outside the camp. The creature was small, with broken legs, and it trembled in pain. Daniel gently lifted the animal, whispered soothing words she did not understand, and carefully wrapped its legs with cloth. Scifi felt something stir inside her, a mixture of surprise and curiosity. No human had ever shown this kind of care, to her or to any living thing from her world. She wondered if there was more to these humans than just soldiers and fighters. Later that day, Daniel returned to her cell and sat near her. "You should eat," he said quietly, holding out a small piece of fruit. His eyes were kind, but also serious. Scifi took the fruit slowly and looked at him. "Why do you care?" she asked. Daniel shrugged. "Because I've seen too much. Hate. I don't want to be part of it." She looked away, unsure what to say. Her mind was full of questions. That night, a strong wind blew through the camp. Scifi heard whispers among the human soldiers, rumors of a new attack. Her heart tightened. She knew war was never far. The next day, the camp was on high alert. Daniel was busy helping prepare defenses, but he made time to check on Scifi. "You should stay inside today," he said. "It might get dangerous." Scifi nodded, but she felt restless. She wanted to understand more about this man, the human soldier who did not act like a monster. When the sun began to set, Scifi heard the sound of distant explosions. The enemy was attacking. Panic filled the camp as soldiers rushed to their positions. Daniel grabbed a weapon and called out orders. Scifi felt her body tremble. She wanted to help, but had no way. Suddenly, a blast shook the ground nearby. Dust filled the air. Scifi stumbled and fell. Before she could get up, a strong hand reached down and pulled her up. It was Daniel. He held her close, his face calm but focused. "Stay close," he said. "I won't let anything happen to you." Together they moved through the chaos. Daniel shielded her from flying debris and bullets. Scifi saw the bravery in his eyes, not just a soldier following orders, but a man who cared deeply. When the attack finally ended, the camp was quiet again. Soldiers were tired but alleviated, as Scifi looked at Daniel with new respect. "Thank you," she said softly. "You saved my life." Daniel smiled tiredly. "I just did what was right." That night, Scifi could not stop thinking about Daniel's actions. She realized that her view of humans was incomplete. They were not all cruel or violent. Some could be kind and brave, even to their enemies. As she lay on the cold floor of her cell, Scifi made a quiet promise to herself. She would try to see humans as more than monsters. She would learn their true nature. The next morning, Daniel returned with a small book. "This is for you," he said. "It's about Earth and its people. Maybe it will help you understand us better." Scifi took the book carefully. She opened it and saw pictures of forests, oceans, and cities full of life. She smiled for the first time in days. "Thank you," she said. "I will read it." Daniel nodded. "We are not so different." After all, for the first time, Scifi felt hope. Maybe this war could end not with hate, but with understanding. The days in the camp grew quieter after the attack. Commander Scifi spent her time reading the small book Daniel had given her. The pictures showed a world very different from her own, full of blue oceans, green forests, and tall cities shining under a bright sun. The words were simple, but the stories inside were powerful. Scifi's heart began to soften toward the humans. The kindness she had seen in Daniel now had a face, a name, and a story. One afternoon, Daniel came to her cell with a gentle look. He carried a small device that played recordings. "I want to tell you something," he said quietly. "Something about why I fight." Solari looked at him, curious but cautious. Daniel sat down near her and pressed a button on the device. A soft voice filled the room, telling a story. "This is my sister," Daniel said. Her name was Maya. Solari listened closely as the recording played. Maya was a young woman, full of hope and dreams. She lived in a city far from the battlefields. She believed in peace and spent her days helping people who had no food or shelter. One day, she joined a peaceful protest to ask for fairness and justice. But the protest turned violent when some soldiers arrived. Maya was caught in the middle. The crowd scattered, but Maya did not run fast enough. She was hurt badly, and later, died. Daniel's voice was quiet but full of pain. "I joined the military because I wanted to protect people like my sister. Not to fight for war, but to stop it." Solari's eyes filled with tears. She had never heard a human speak like this before. Her people saw humans only as fighters, destroyers of worlds. Now she saw a man who fought because of love and loss. Daniel looked at Solari and said, "Not all humans are monsters. Some of us carry pain and hope at the same time." Solari reached out her hand slowly. Daniel took it gently. For the first time, she felt a true connection, not as prisoner and guard, but as two beings who understood loss. The camp around them seemed less cold. The war still raged, but inside this small room there was a spark of peace. Days later, Solari asked Daniel to teach her more about his world. He agreed. They spent hours together. He showed her how to use simple tools. He told her stories about Earth's history, its people, and its mistakes. Solari shared stories of her own home, her family, and the culture she loved. Though their languages were different, their hearts spoke the same language: hope. One evening, Daniel showed Solari a small garden near the camp. It was a tiny patch of green in the middle of metal and dust. Flowers bloomed there, bright and strong. "This garden survived many storms," Daniel said. "Like hope, it finds a way." Solari smiled. Hope can grow anywhere. Their bond grew stronger, but the war outside the camp waited for no one. One day, the camp's leader ordered a new mission. They were to move deeper into enemy territory. The soldiers prepared quickly. Solari knew the danger was coming. Daniel came to her cell. His eyes were serious. "If you want to leave, now is your chance." Solari looked at him. "Why would you help me escape?" Daniel shook his head. "Because I believe you should have a choice." That night, Solari stood by the small window in her cell. She looked at the stars. Her heart was heavy with questions. Was she ready to leave the humans? Or was she ready to face the truth that humans could be more than what her people said? The answer was unclear, but one thing was certain: Daniel was no monster. The days in the camp passed quietly, but inside something new was growing between Commander Solari and the human soldier, Daniel. Their relationship was no longer just prisoner and guard. It had become something deeper, an unlikely bond built on trust, understanding, and hope. Daniel had begun bringing Solari small gifts, books, drawings, and even a few items from his own world. He taught her simple words from Earth languages, and Solari shared stories of her own people's traditions. Their conversations were often quiet, but full of meaning. One afternoon, Daniel brought a small sketch pad and pencils. He sat beside Solari's cell and offered her the tools. "Try to draw something," he said gently. "Anything you want." Solari hesitated but took the pencils. Slowly, she began to sketch the memory of her home: tall trees with purple leaves, rivers that shone like silver, and the mountains that touched the sky. Drawing calmed her, and soon her hands moved with confidence. When she finished, Daniel smiled warmly. "You have a beautiful world." Solari looked at him, her eyes soft. "I want to share it with you." From that day, drawing became their language. Scifi would sketch her memories, and Daniel would draw the places he had seen on Earth. Through art, they found a way to understand each other beyond words. Their friendship grew despite the eyes that watched them. Some soldiers whispered and stared. They did not understand why Daniel spent so much time with an alien captive, but Daniel did not care. For him, Scifi was not just a prisoner. She was a person deserving respect. Scifi also noticed the kindness of other soldiers. They brought her blankets when the nights were cold, shared extra food, and sometimes smiled at her in passing. The camp was not perfect, but it was changing. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant mountains, Daniel took Scifi to the small garden near the camp. Flowers glowed softly in the fading light, their colors bright and alive. "This garden is a place of peace," Daniel said. "No matter what happens outside here, life grows." Scifi reached out and touched a delicate petal. "It is beautiful," she said. Daniel nodded. "It reminds me that even in war there can be hope." Scifi smiled for the first time in a long while. "I want to believe that." As the days passed, Scifi learned more about Daniel. She saw how much he cared for his fellow soldiers and the animals they shared the camp with. She watched him help an injured dog, comforting it with quiet words. She began to see that humans were complex, capable of great kindness and great strength. One night, Scifi found Daniel sitting alone by the fire. She joined him, and they shared stories under the stars. Daniel told her about his childhood, growing up in a small town with a family who loved him. Scifi spoke of her own family, of the hopes she once had for peace between their worlds. Though they were from different planets, their dreams were the same. Suddenly, the camp was shaken by an alarm. Soldiers rushed to their positions. Scifi's heart pounded as she realized danger was near. Daniel stood and took her hand gently. "Stay close," he said. "I will protect you." They moved together through the camp, ready to face whatever came. In that moment, Scifi understood something new. The human soldier was no longer a stranger. He was a friend, and maybe something more. The night was dark and quiet, but inside Commander Scifi's heart, a storm was growing. She had spent many days in the human camp, learning about Daniel and seeing a different side of humanity. Still, old fears and doubts lingered. Was she truly safe? Was this kindness real? Or was it just another trap? Scifi paced slowly inside her small cell. Her hands, though no longer tied, felt restless. She longed for freedom, the open skies of her home, the familiar sounds of her world. But she also felt something new, a strange connection to this human soldier who had shown her nothing but respect. That night, she made a decision. She waited until the camp was quiet, and then she quietly slipped out of her cell. The corridors were dimly lit, and shadows moved like ghosts. Scifi's heart pounded as she moved toward the camp's perimeter. She knew the guards' patrol patterns from watching them. She hoped to slip past unnoticed. But as she reached the outer fence, a hand gently touched her shoulder. She turned quickly, ready to run or fight. But it was Daniel. His eyes were calm, and his voice was soft. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. "If you want to leave, I will help you." Scifi looked into his eyes and saw no anger, no judgment, just understanding. Tears filled her eyes. "I don't know what I want anymore," she whispered. "I'm afraid." Daniel nodded. "It's okay to be afraid, but you have a choice." She swallowed hard. "If I leave, I lose everything here. If I stay, I might lose my freedom." Daniel smiled gently. "Freedom isn't always about where you are. Sometimes it's about who you trust." Scifi took a deep breath. She looked back at the camp, the people, the small garden, the friends she had made. She closed her eyes, expecting fear, expecting betrayal. But instead, she felt a warm hand holding hers. When she opened her eyes, Daniel was smiling, offering hope. "I want to stay," she said quietly. Daniel squeezed her hand. Then you are safe with me. They walked back inside the camp together. Solari felt lighter, as if a heavy weight had lifted from her shoulders. In the days that followed, their bond grew stronger. Daniel taught her more about Earth and its people. Solari shared stories of her home and dreams for peace. One afternoon, Solari was allowed to walk outside the camp under Daniel's watchful eye. The sky was clear and the air smelled fresh. She looked around and smiled. For the first time, she felt hope, not just for herself but for both their worlds. But war was never far away. The camp received news of a new mission, one that would take soldiers deep into enemy territory. Daniel was among those chosen. That night, Solari and Daniel sat by the small garden watching the stars. "I don't want to lose you," Solari said softly. Daniel took her hand. "I will come back," he promised. "No matter what." Solari nodded, trusting his words. As Daniel prepared to leave, Solari felt a mix of fear and hope. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Whatever happened next, she was no longer alone. The morning sun rose slowly over the camp, casting long shadows on the dusty ground. Commander Solari watched from her small room as the soldiers prepared for their mission. Daniel was among them, his face calm but determined. Today, they would move deeper into enemy territory. Solari felt a mix of worry and hope. She wanted Daniel to be safe, but she also understood the importance of this mission. It could change the war's course. As the time to leave grew near, Solari was brought before the camp leader. The officer's voice was cold and firm. "All non-human captives must be left behind. We cannot risk slowing the mission." Solari's heart sank. She looked at Daniel, hoping for support. Daniel's eyes met hers, full of conflict. After a moment, he stepped forward. "I will not leave her here," he said quietly but firmly. The camp leader frowned. "That is not your decision to make, soldier." Daniel shook his head. "I choose to protect her. No one will decide her fate but me." That night, as the camp prepared for departure, Daniel quietly approached Solari's cell. He had a small bag with him. "We're leaving," he said softly. "I'm taking you with me." Solari felt a wave of relief and fear. The future was uncertain, but at least she would not be alone. They moved quickly through the camp, avoiding the main paths. Daniel used his knowledge of the base to reach a hidden shuttle. As they climbed aboard, Solari looked back at the place that had been her prison, and surprisingly, her refuge. The shuttle lifted off just as alarms began to sound. Outside the window, the camp was under attack. Daniel piloted the shuttle skillfully, weaving through danger. Solari held tightly to his hand. After escaping the immediate threat, they set course for a neutral colony known for peace talks between different species. The journey was long and tense, but Daniel's steady presence gave Solari strength. When they finally arrived, Solari was greeted by a crowd of diplomats and officials. Her testimony about Daniel's kindness and bravery opened new doors. Leaders from both sides began discussions about ending the war and building trust. Solari found herself invited to speak at a new academy, teaching peace and diplomacy. Daniel worked as security there, always quietly supporting her. Their journey had begun with fear and captivity but grew into something powerful, a hope for a better future. As they stood together overlooking the city lights one evening, Solari smiled. "Thanks you for believing in me," she said. Daniel smiled back. "Thank you for trusting me." In a universe torn by conflict, two souls had found peace and a chance to change everything. The neutral colony was unlike anything Solari had ever seen. Its cities were bright, full of life and hope. People and aliens from many worlds walked the streets together, sharing stories and dreams. It was a place built for peace. Solari stood on a balcony overlooking the busy market below. Beside her stood Daniel, quiet but steady as always. The soft breeze carried the sense of unfamiliar flowers and fresh food. For Solari, this place was more than just a refuge. It was a new beginning. The past months had changed her deeply. She had gone from captive to friend, from fear to hope. And now she was ready to help build a future where her people and humans could live side by side. Inside the great hall of the Interspecies Academy, Solari faced a group of young students. They were a mix of aliens and humans, eager to learn about peace and understanding. She spoke in clear, simple words, sharing her story. "War's easy," she said, "but peace takes courage. We must see each other not as enemies, but as friends." The students listened closely. Some nodded, others asked questions. Solari smiled. This was why she had come here, to teach, to learn, and to grow. After the lecture, Daniel waited for her outside. He handed her a cup of tea and asked, "How do you feel?" Solari took a sip and looked at him. "I feel hopeful." Daniel smiled. "That hope will change worlds." Their days were filled with meetings, lessons, and talks between leaders from different planets. Slowly, old wounds began to heal. Solari and Daniel often walked through the colony's gardens, dreaming of a time when no one would carry weapons or fear. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Daniel took Solari's hand. "I never thought I would find a friend like you," he said softly. Solari squeezed his hand in return. "Neither did I." Though their worlds were different, their hearts beat as one. News came that peace talks were progressing. Both sides agreed to stop fighting and begin rebuilding. Solari felt pride. Her people's future was no longer just a hope. It was becoming real. At night, she sometimes looked at the stars and remembered the lonely cell where she had first met Daniel. The fear she had felt then seemed like a distant memory. Now, she closed her eyes knowing she was safe, loved, and free. Together, they had turned fear into trust and war into peace. Their story was a reminder that even in the darkest times, kindness and courage could change everything.